Hello, Matthew. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm hoping this is recording. Yes, it is. Right. Yes. Sorry, I just had messages popping up on my screen all over the place saying things are happening. Right. I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
It's a good start. It's a good start. I
Good
think
start,
I'm
yeah,
recording
so,
as well, so that's always
yeah.
good. Well, thank you for speaking to me today from your rather glamorous office in comparison to my rather mundane functional suite.
You can see my my barbecue in the garden out the back there if you look sort of over my shoulder. So that's my back garden, sort of in the distance there.
When was the last time that was used?
Quite a long time ago.
Is it still got evidence of burnt sausages?
Well, almost certainly, but yeah, it was probably a work drink stew I had, a while back in the summer.
You had people around, Boris.
obviously, I had Boris around. He was ready. He didn't know it was a problem. So
he didn't know.
Just invited the whole government round. Anyway, let's not go there. Let's not go there.
No, let's not.
There's enough scumbags in my books. Sorry, don't want to get political. Let's not get political.
No, it's too easy. It's too easy at the moment. There's nothing else to do. Well, thank you for joining me. I know it's been 7-8 months since the last time we spoke properly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, time flies.
It does. It does. Time flies, but nothing changes. I think the last time we spoke, I vividly remember stumbling around a car park in Bradford-on-Avon. So,
yeah, maybe yes. I think you were probably looking for something somewhere. I don't know, but yeah, it was fun. Yeah, wandering around Bradford-on-Avon.
It was. I should probably give a little bit of background as to what that comment means. So Matthew very nicely agreed to talk to me last year for a podcast I was doing for a previous employer. And we met in Bradford-on-Avon for a chat, and then we went for a walking tour, which quickly descended into a mini pub crawl around Bradford-on-Avon. And the podcast was recorded in several bars and several outdoor locations.
It's amazing what you could do with editing.
It is. I think we even sounded slightly sober.
Yeah, I think so. By the end of it, I was waiting to listen to sort of clinking glasses and things. But nothing, it all sounds like we're sort of just, sitting in a studio somewhere.
Yeah, well, I guess we were. We were sitting somewhere, but it was outdoors. Yeah. It was outdoors. So, just as a brief introduction to you and what you do and who you are, for those who don't know you, shame on them. You are a best-selling author. It must be a good few 100,000 books you've sold, 500,000.
Somewhere around there. Yes, there's a few have sold. Yeah.
Oh, that's very modest of you. Do you want to give a little bit of background about the books and the kind of periods you cover?
Yeah, sure. So I write a series. The thing that I'm most known for is a series of books called the Benicio Chronicles. And that's set in the 7th century, first half of the 7th century in Britain. So the latest one that's just come out is book 8 in the series, which is I've got here, For Lord and Land. And the first one is called The Serpent Sword, and it follows the story of a character called Bearbrand, and he becomes a warrior, and he follows in the footsteps of different kings and famous people, and his life is inextricably linked with these people of the time. So it's historical fiction, but very much heavily focused on the fiction. And that's 7th century, so before the Vikings. And my latest, I started another series called A Time for Swords as well. And that's set again in Northumberland. So I didn't say the other one's all set in Northumbria, starts off in Northumbria mainly. And this new one, again, starts in Northumbria. It's a bit later. This is at the very beginning of the Viking Age. This is late 8th century. Is that right? Yeah, 793, it says on the back of the book. So, 793, it starts in Lindisfarne with the Viking raids. And this follows a monk who becomes a warrior. And the new book in this series is called A Night of Flames. And that's coming out in March. So just a couple of months away. Or less than a couple of months away now. And I've written a standalone book as well called Wolf of Wessex, which is set in 9th century, so early Viking Age in Wessex, strangely enough, which is where I live. So I live in Wiltshire. And so I thought it would be nice to set something more local to me. And He's an aging warrior. Dunstan is the main character in that book, who wanders the hills and forests with his dog, Odin. And I am an aging writer who wanders the hills and fields and forests with my young dog called Blue, who is not quite as fierce as Odin, but probably thinks he is.
He's not.
No, he's not. Anyway, so that's me.
And I think,
what about you? Who are you? Who are you, Craig?
Who am I, Craig? I am Craig. No, I think I'm a fan of your books, and that's why I got in touch last year. But I think more than that, as we discovered last year while we were having a chat in several shandies last year, I'm from the northeast of England, and you've spent a lot of time, grew up partially in the northeast of England. And as it turned out, one of the topics of your book, or the main start of your books, was at Bamburgh, obviously in the northeast, on the Northumberland coast. And I excavated some of the burials that you then kind of were talking about in your book. And it was, although I'd love to say that you based your books on my work, it's not quite how it was. It was
it was inspirational, though. It was inspirational. The digs that you're involved with and the uncovering of bodies, remains from the 7th century and around that same time period, were part of the biggest part of the inspiration when I saw a documentary about them, which started me writing the Serpent Sword, which was an amazing connection to have with you, to realize that you'd actually worked on that archaeological dig and regularly worked around that area.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the word archaeological, because I realized as you were describing me digging up bodies, I sounded like some kind of grave robber. So I think we should
Isn't that another term? Isn't that another term for archaeologist?
I couldn't possibly say on camera. So if people don't know, I am an archaeologist. I do live in the northeast of England. I have lived and worked all over the world as well, and all over the UK. You might have guessed by my accent anyway as to where I'm from. And it was great when we actually got in touch last year and met up, and it was really nice of you to give up an entire day of your time and invited me around to your house, even though I could have been some crazy axeman stalker. It was nice of you to open your doors to me, and I could meet your dog and sit in the studio where you were filming from.
Yes, this is true. Yeah, it was new then. It was just very, very new. So luckily you weren't a psycho, or at least not that I know of. So it was. I survived. I don't think there's many writers that I know that would give up a chance of a day to talk about their books and history and drink beer. So I don't think it's that rare. I think if you reached out to other writers, you might find that they'd also just go, yeah, that sounds great. Yeah, give me half a day of drinking and eating and talking.
Well, I think archaeologists are exactly the same, to be quite honest, because we love all the same things, drinking and talking about history, and occasionally I talk about football to people who will put up with it.
Yeah, I actually went to a football match last night. Unbelievable. I've only been to like 3 football matches in my life. But I went to one last night. Westbury United versus Swindon Town. And Westbury is very near where I live, and my daughter's boyfriend plays in the team, and they won. They beat Swindon Town 4-0, thumping victory. So, great fun.
Did you enjoy
it? And cold. That was great fun. Yeah, it was great. And last time they played Swindon Town, because they're playing, it's like the Wiltshire FA Shield or something, so it's a cup thing. And last time they played a couple of years ago, Swindon beat them 7-0.
Wow.
And this time they beat Swindon 4-0. So I think Swindon made a mistake of not fielding their proper strong team, because they were sort of focusing more on their league. And they played Manchester City like 2 weeks ago, Swindon Town. And so I think they were kind of keeping their players maybe resting for whatever matches they've got coming up. But they probably regret that now, getting a thumping from Westbury. But
I think a lot of clubs at the moment are having to field whoever they've got because of COVID and stuff like that.
That was that, yeah. Yeah. They fielded a new goalkeeper, and I don't think he looked the part. He was huge, massive guy, but
he was only 5 years old. He's from the academy.
He was like 6'6", so he wasn't 5, but he let in a good few goals.
Well, my team that I support is Sunderland. which isn't always a good thing, especially with all of my friends supporting Newcastle. My dad seemed to have cursed me at birth like some kind of witch, with supporting this team as his dad before him and his dad before him. So now I've passed that on to my children as well. But just recently we've started to go watching South Shields Football Club.
Okay.
Who play in the Northern Premier, South Shields is quite a big town. Most people haven't heard of it. It's where the Great North Run finishes and Catherine Cookson's from, and that's usually about it.
Okay, yeah.
But it's got a population of 100,000. It's bigger than you think.
Right.
And I've been going to watch them recently. Got a season ticket, and
so they actually win games then?
They do, which is
wow. This is it. Yes,
exactly.
That's right. So it's nice. It's nice watching. So seeing Westbury, playing. It's good because they actually win games, and they're good.
It's great. Like South Shields are in non-league football at the moment, but they have a fully professional team now. All their team are full pros, which is really rare for that league. And I was at the match on Saturday with the kids, and there was 2,000 fans there, which for non-league footballs, it's huge.
Great, yeah.
And so we take the kids as well, and it's been great because during things like COVID and stuff like that, we haven't wanted to go anywhere, I think. And the kids have developed anxieties and all kinds of stuff. And I'm trying not to go into COVID too much because it's quite a dark subject.
But you're mentioning your kids, so maybe that's the perfect moment for you to mention about why it is that you're now, trying to doing a YouTube channel and getting publicity for things and talking to me today.
Well, I'm glad you're here, because otherwise I would have talked about football for the entire time.
Yes, well, I did put us onto the football track, but anyway, yeah. So I'll steer us back.
Well, so I've started a YouTube channel, and I asked you to talk to me because I am doing what started off as some kind of inspirational idea while I was out walking the dogs has now turned into something quite painful. So I'm doing a running challenge.
Sounds like writing a novel.
There's probably similar parallels in there. I'm doing a running challenge this year, which is 4,200 kilometers in 2022, which when you say it like that, people just go, why have you done that?
Yes, what exactly? Why have you done that?
So I started on January the 1st, and I'm running a 10 kilometer every day and a half marathon every Sunday. So for people that don't regularly exercise, which was me just before Christmas, there's no rest periods, that your legs can't recover. I'm currently carrying quite a big injury in my calf, which went pop at the weekend. But before I talk about my woes and my injuries, basically I'm running to raise money for two amazing charities, the Northeast Autism Society and the Alan Shearer Foundation. And I'm doing that because some people might know, I've got three sons, and they're all autistic to various degrees. So my youngest son, Teddy, he's nonverbal and has major sensory issues. He's coming up 5 in March, but he gets mistaken for a toddler all the time. So he's probably going to end up going to a specialist school, which the Northeast Autism Society run. My middle son, Finn, he has the George syndrome, which is a chromosome deletion. So it's in the same spectrum as Down syndrome, but on the other end. And he has things like congenital heart issues, shortened muscles in his body. And we're waiting for open heart surgery for him this year. But a symptom of that, or symptomatic of that, is autism. And he has autism in such ways where he has tics, he has sensory issues, anxiety issues, and he's actually, I say developed, it's probably the wrong term, and I'll probably get shouted down, but he seems to have developed Tourette's as well, which he's going through assessment for at the moment. So my eldest son, Alfie, is autistic as well and suffers from anxiety and sensory issues. So between the three boys, we're kept quite busy, and I decided to raise money for charities that have been supporting my family, basically, like the Alan Shearer Foundation, which is, unsurprisingly, their main patron is Alan Shearer. They run a centre in Newcastle, which is like a respite care and residential, but they also have sensory rooms and hydro pools and stuff, so the kids can go there and just relax in an environment that they're not going to be judged in, and it's completely free. But they need £250,000 every year to run, let alone do anything else. And the Northeast Autism Society, NEAS, they run specialist schools and offer support to parents and carers, and they support not just children but adults as well with autism. And obviously a lot of their resources are free, and without going into some kind of government rant, those kind of funds and services are just the funds for those services just aren't there. So unfortunately, they have to raise money and fundraise. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, which is slightly, on the face of it, slightly crazy. But I'm also, so if I go running on my own and it wasn't for charity, I could quite easily stop after half a mile and go home and just be angry at myself for giving up. Yeah. When I'm out running, I know for a fact that it's for a reason, and it's for the kids' future, you know. And it's something that as a family we've kept pretty much close to us as our thing, and haven't wanted to talk about it too much. But now there's no shame in it. We don't have any reservations about it. The kids are who they are, and that's what makes them who they are. And we wouldn't change it. You know, like some of the most creative and intelligent people in the world have been autistic.
Yeah.
And unbelievably loving and creative. And we moved to somewhere really remote in the Pennines, simply so the kids could express themselves more. We live on an old farm where they can run and make noise, because previously we've had neighbours who've asked us to shut up or told the kids to be quiet, or can you ask them to stop shouting or making noises, but you can't. It's like asking to stop a rock rolling down a hill. You can't stop it. And I know I've gone off slightly on a bit of a tangent, but I just wanted to give people the understanding as to why I'm doing something so crazy.
Well, it's, it sounds like obviously it impacts your life, all the time, and something that, it makes sense that you want to pay back to those charities and raise money to help your own family, that are getting help from them, but also to help others, right? And to raise awareness as well, so that other people know that these charities are out there, and to look for help, I suppose. So you're raising money through the running. How are you doing it?
So I've got there's two Just Giving pages, which I've got justgiving.com/team/running for autism, and the second link is exactly the same but with the number 2 on the end, because Just Giving doesn't let you have one page for two charities. You have to split it.
Okay.
So I'm asking people it's up to them. There's two choices. They can donate to either charity, or, if I know through my own year last year during COVID and due financial issues, I know some people can't donate, and I completely understand. So there's no pressure from friends or family. All I would ask, and something that is possibly slightly more important, or definitely more important actually than donating money, is increasing awareness and understanding and acceptance of autistic people, children and adults. Sometimes people see my youngest Teddy having a kind of meltdown in the street, and it's because his mind just can't cope anymore, and he has sensory overloads. But I'd like people to know that if they see children like that, it's not because they're having a temper tantrum or they're spoiled kids or spoiled brats. They could be autistic, and just to have, I know that's just one example, but just to kind of have a bit more awareness and understanding and kindness, I guess, about autism. With having the 3 boys, and maybe before having children at all, I guess I could have been judgmental or perceived as being judgmental, and that's my bad 100%, because until I had the kids, I wasn't aware of what people were going through. And some days we can't leave the house. If 1, 2 or 3 of the boys decide that today is not that day, then we're stuck in the house.
I mean, having kids is difficult enough. So having kids that have got all of these issues that make life, more challenging. I think it's difficult because I think I can understand exactly what you're saying about people not having that awareness, because I think the same is true to some extent of people who don't have children versus people who do have children. So, I've got two grown-up daughters now, but when we walk around a supermarket, I see a child having a meltdown, I don't instantly get angry like I would have done when I was 20, didn't have kids, and would be like, oh yeah, bloody people with their kids, whatever. But now I'm thinking, I remember those days when the kids would have a meltdown and there's nothing you could do about it. Even, they just have, that's it, they're a toddler or whatever, and they have their thing. And they're screaming and shouting and pulling things off the shelf and stuff. You think, oh my goodness, I remember those days of having to pick the child up and sort of, walk out the shop while they're screaming. And
it's that. I think everybody has those moments, don't they?
Yeah.
Where you just
so I think,
child up and leaving a shop.
Yeah. This is too much now. I can't deal with it anymore.
It's all you can do. And I know there's a lot of shops and supermarkets now have special autism kind of time zones when you can go in. So it's usually early mornings or late evenings where it's like quiet. They don't have music on and the lights are dimmed, so they don't overstimulate children.
Interesting,
which is good, because that's a more modern thing, but it's quite subtle the way that they do it, which is good as well, because it doesn't draw attention to people. But a lot of the time, if we do go out as a family, which is quite rare actually these days, to go out as the whole family, we have to go to very, very select places. We have to go at the start of the day or the end of the day when we know there's going to be fewer people, or somewhere that's quiet. We can't go to shopping centres. We can't go to big football stadiums anymore. We can't go to the cinema as a family. We can't go on holiday as a family, as a whole family, because it just doesn't work unless it was to a very, very specialist place. And now Teddy is 4. He's incredibly mobile. And as I'm getting older, I'm getting incredibly slow. So it's difficult to catch him.
So getting incredibly slow takes us nicely back onto your running challenge. And I'm thinking, you mentioned that your leg, you said you've got 10 kilometers a day and a half marathon, which is what, 13 miles? So what's that?
So
what's a half marathon in kilometers?
21 kilometers every Sunday.
21 kilometers, right? So 21 kilometers on a Sunday and 10 kilometers every other day. No rest days at all.
Every day is 10k, yeah. So no rest days.
So first, that's stupid. But okay, you've set yourself that challenge. That's fine.
I can't back out.
Now you can't back out. But you're now thinking this is ridiculous. So So you said your calf has popped. So I tore my calf muscle a year and a bit ago. So December, not last December, the December 2020 it would have been, I suppose. I'm trying to remember now. It seems like it's all a blur. And I tore my calf muscle, and all I was doing was walking my dog. And I tried to jump over a stream, and my calf muscles went, and it was not. And there's no way I could have run. I couldn't even walk afterwards, and I had to do physio and stuff. And I couldn't walk properly. I can still feel it now, like a year later, but it's fine. I can walk fine and everything now. But I wouldn't want to be running 10k even a few weeks afterwards, let alone every night the day after.
No, I mean, about 4 years ago, I was playing five-a-side, and I did my Achilles, as they say in football, and that was like a big ping, and the whole thing just it felt like something being ripped apart, and I couldn't walk, and I couldn't run, I couldn't really do much for about 4 or 5 months. But this is in my other leg, so I'm kind of evening the legs up.
Okay, that's good, yeah. So you can limp with both legs. You're not limping anymore, I suppose.
Exactly, just walking. Just shuffling around.
That's fine.
But I did it on Sunday. I did a half marathon on Sunday in Dundee. I was visiting my oldest child, and I got a PB. I did under 2 hours for a half marathon. I was thinking,
nice.
I'm on the way to being some kind of Olympic great. It's here. I'm going to
bang.
Fit. Exactly, bang. Next morning, I thought I'll push it, and my legs were obviously overtired and overstrained, and it just went bing. So I had to do the kind of walk of shame back to my hotel. I was 4.5 miles into the run, so I had another 1.5 miles back to stumble uphill, because obviously I decided to finish the run uphill just to be that extra bit macho, and backfired. So I'm currently nursing an injury, but currently, if you see a weird bearded man hobbling around the Pennine Hills, it's not a mirage and it's not a ghost. It's just me broken on the hills.
So are you basically trying to, or your aim is to do the miles and the kilometers, even if you're injured? And so if you're injured, you just do it at a much slower pace and hope for the best. Have you got someone, checking out all your, I don't know, sorting you out, the medical backup, someone massaging your legs afterwards, or you're doing ice baths? What are you doing?
I've got my partner. I was going to say I've got a partner. My partner, Hannah, she is a personal trainer and does sports massage as part of her personal training.
See, it all makes sense now.
It does.
It's just an excuse to get free massages, isn't it?
Well, come on. She's a fantastic personal trainer, but because we live together, I can't use her as a personal trainer simply because we just argue and I tell her to get lost. But if she's going to offer free sports massage, who am I to say no? And she's very, very good, but she's also very, very busy. So about 2 or 3 times a week, she's given my legs massages. And she described it as like rubbing tripe. So all lumpy and bumpy and just full of where the muscles have torn and then adhered back, but like in a really awful way.
It's what you want your partner to describe touching your body as, really, isn't it? I was just thinking, it's like, I love touching your body. It's like massaging tripe.
I love that about you. I love a bit of tripe. Yeah. Get the vinegar on. Yeah. So it's becoming quite a daunting. It was always daunting. I'm not going to lie. It was always quite a daunting challenge, but now I'm into it. It's becoming more daunting because I'm posting on Facebook and keeping whoever's interested up to date with what I'm doing. And at the weekend, I broke the 200-mile barrier, which I thought, amazing. That's 200 miles since the 1st of January. And then it was pointed out.
It's amazing.
Stupid still, but it was pointed out that I've still got 4,000 to go. And I've been asked if I've got any plans for next year, challenge-wise.
Have a break, I think.
Hopefully not a broken leg, but
no, not that kind of break. I think have a break, just have a rest.
The hills. Well, I've kind of got. I'm sat here whinging about it, but I've started to
don't set yourself a challenge for next year. You're in January still. Don't do it.
I'm already thinking about it. Because this year, one of the main aims was to try and run in as many different places as possible. And so far, I've managed 2 different places. I've managed the Durham Dales and then Dundee. So all the Ds. Yeah. I'm hoping to find more places. And one of the places I actually want to run is Banbury.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like a plan.
Yeah, I don't quite
over the causeway. Lindisfarne over the causeway and then to Banbury.
I mean, what I could do is time it so that I know the tide's going to come in, and then try and get a PB.
You've got like a 6-hour window or something, so I think you'll be able to sort it out. But yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, I mean, I might die horrifically, but I could be on the news for the wrong reasons on one of those rescue stations on the causeway.
Absolutely, good publicity.
It's amazing publicity. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before. But I'm hoping that people are going to actually start coming to join me. My partner, Hannah, she came to join me for one of the runs and then got a little bit annoyed at me because I left her behind because I was trying to chase a PB, which was stupid because I had company.
Is the idea to get personal bests and try to get faster all the time, or is the idea to complete it? Because I think pushing yourself to try and do personal bests is probably not, but you're a runner, so that's what happens, I guess.
I mean, the challenge for me is just to survive the year and that my legs will still be in one piece. But when over the last 3 weeks, I felt my old fitness coming back a bit, and I used to be able to run I've done marathons in the past over the fells and the dales and stuff, and I could feel that kind of energy coming back, and I could see these because I wear a Garmin watch, bit of product placement there, and I could see. I could see these possible records popping up on my watch, and I was thinking, go on then. But one of those days was the day.
It's always the technology. Yeah, it's always the technology that pushes you.
Some
do
days,
something else.
some of the best runs I have is when I don't take my phone and I don't take my watch and I just go for a free run and I can just think about everything that isn't thinking about. I need to get back in time to do work, and I need to get back in time to do this, and I need to walk the dog still.
So I was gonna say that the just a quick question about the whole how it works really is, how do you find the time to do it? Because I think I'd struggle to find the time to run every single day. Well, at least I tell myself that. Maybe that's my excuse for not doing as much exercise as I'd like. But
sounds like an excuse to me.
I do walk the dog.
I just have to find the time. I've got, you can probably say, horrendous bags under my eyes because I get up before work quite early, about 5:30, and then I get up, have coffee, and then just go out straight away with a head torch on because it's still pitch black at those times. And I take the dogs with me as well because I'm a massive scaredy cat. And because of where we live, there's just sheep appearing out of the dark with eyes that glow in the reflective in my headlight. So it's a bit spectral at times. But I get back and then help Hannah out with the kids, then get ready, go to work. After dropping my son off at nursery, do a full day's work, go home, cook the tea. My partner goes to work, put the kids to bed. Then I work again, and then go to sleep. So
that's your day. That's it. Yeah,
it's pretty much. The weekends are a bit more interesting, but not by much. There's just no work in there. Not usually, anyway. But the dogs need a walk as well, so I usually have to walk the dogs when I get home. They are enjoying the runs possibly more than I am, because now the sheep are off the top fields. I can let the dogs off and we can all run together.
Brilliant.
Occasionally they leave me and run off chasing rabbits or whatever. So I'm left in the dark alone with a head torch, which isn't great really because we've only got a limited lumens going out.
Yeah.
So it's fun times, but the charities are definitely worth it. I should point that out before I start talking about how horrible the challenge is.
No, it sounds brilliant. So I mean, obviously I'm going to be sharing this on my social media as well. You're going to be putting it out on your YouTube channel and I guess Facebook and wherever else you are. So just if people want to see how things are going and where they need to donate to and look you up on Facebook, whatever, I'll put all of those links in the description of the video, and I guess you will be doing the same on your own channel, obviously. Have you got like a global website, a single website that people would go to? Or
no, I don't have
Just Giving.
I haven't got a website, but there's the Just Giving page, but there's also my Facebook page as well, which is 81/52/365 running for autism, which is quite the mouthful.
Everybody's going to remember that one. So
click on the link.
Put the link. I'll put the link in the description. People can find you.
Well, obviously, we've talked about my challenge for the last, it feels like 20 years, but it's probably about 20 minutes. But as a bit of a personal interest for me, because I'm nosy and I'm a fan, but also for other people who are probably watching this for you rather than me, I've got a few questions about your books, if that's all right.
Okay, well, fire away.
They're quite tame, so don't worry too much. Obviously, you've got 2 different series going at the moment, obviously from 2 different time periods, but what can we expect to see from the books without giving too much away? Like, what kind of plans for the series do you have, and how long do you envisage them running?
Okay, so good question. So it's an interesting one. Sometimes I regret starting a second series because it feels like a real gear change from going from one to the other, because I'm sort of into, I'm doing one and then I'm doing the other. But basically, I'm in early stages of the Time for Swords series. I'm not sure how many books are going to be in that series. At the moment, there's definitely going to be at least 3. So where I'm at is I'm sort of going to wrap up the initial kind of overarching storyline, I think, after a trilogy. So the 3rd book, after A Night of Flames, there'll be another book, and I'll try to sort of close down the sort of the story arc there is there. But I think there'll still be a longer option for having more adventures. So Hunlaf is writing the books as an old man, ostensibly. Ostensibly he's writing it, and he's an old man looking back on his life. But the stories still he's very much a young man. So there's plenty of scope for him to have individual adventures. So initially a trilogy, but definitely with scope for more. But I don't have that long-term plan really in my head. In fact, I don't really have a long-term plan for anything, which is part of the problem when writing a series. I'm writing now book 9 in the Benicio Chronicles, and that follows historical events, that series, as you know. So it starts in 633 for Lord and Land, which is the one I showed you before, which just come out. This is in AD 651. So, already, well, by the next book, it's like basically 20 years into the story. So Bearbrand has grown up quite a lot, and in the 9th book he's crossed the sea and he's in the continent, not for the first time, but the whole book pretty much takes place in France. He's heading for Rome, so that's a bit of a spoiler for people if they haven't read the previous book. But yeah, he's heading for Rome. I thought at the beginning that maybe he'd get to Rome in book 9, but it doesn't look like that's the case, so people might be a bit disappointed. But anyway, his adventure, hopefully there's enough intrigue and skullduggery and murder and all sorts of stuff going on in France and the Merovingian kings for him to for people to enjoy. So that still leaves Rome. So I'm guessing book 10, it wouldn't come too much of a surprise to imagine that he might get his way down to Rome, and then he's going to go, then I think at that point, I would imagine he will return back to Northumberland or Northumbria. And there's still some pending storyline there because his life is inextricably linked with that of the king of Northumbria. In fact, the kings, because he's served multiple kings by this point. But there's obviously battles and war to come along. And Oswy of Northumbria has the constant thorn in his side of Penda of Mercia, and that is all going to come to a head. So I think it's safe to say that Bearbrand will finally see that enmity between Mercia and Northumbria out. Like he'll be there at the end of that particular conflict that's been sort of going on in the background throughout the books. But after that, I mean, I can't see the series running much more than maybe a dozen or so books, maybe 12 or 13, 14 books at the most or something. I can't see it going much beyond that because Bearbrand's sort of getting older, but just because, I don't know, at some point I think you just lose steam and you think, I don't know how far I can keep going with it, but who knows? You never say never and all that. I know other people that have stopped writing after 8 or 9 books and then they've taken a few years out and then they've come back and written more books. There are years in between that I haven't covered, like there's gaps in the book, so you could theory I could write a story that was self-contained in one of those gaps in the future. And also there are characters that could become sort of spin-off characters, and you could have stories from their perspectives, maybe not from Bearbrand. So I suppose that the whole Benicio Chronicles could become a bigger thing. But yeah, I reckon about 12 or 13 books probably feels about right at this time. And I've got ideas at the moment. I'm so when I get to the end of this new one, which is Forest of Foes that I'm writing now, another alliterative title, of course. I'm gonna take a while to think about the next. So I'm going to write a synopsis for the next Bearbrand Benicio book, and another synopsis for the next Time of Swords book, and then think of a synopsis as well for another possibly totally different book, maybe in a different time frame, different series or a standalone or something, and then weigh up my options about which one I want to tackle next. Well, so I've got some ideas in the back of my mind for something else maybe.
You started by saying you didn't have a plan, but it sounds like you've got a pretty good plan there.
Yeah, I've got some sort of plan, but my plan, I mean, I was looking at a notebook the other day, and my plan for each book is like 1 line or 2 lines. It's I know some writers have much more detailed plans than I do.
Well, it kind of leads into the next question because you briefly touched upon it, and I was wondering if there's any other periods of time and history that you're interested in that you might be inclined to write about.
Yeah. So I think, yes, definitely. And there's one that keeps on cropping up is the 19th century, probably the second half of the 19th century. It would take a lot of research, but especially I'm drawn to the Western and sort of the west of the United States and the whole sort of expansion and the frontier, I guess, of the West. It's not very popular at the moment. It's not popular genre to write. Every now and again, there's like a book that comes out that does very well, or a film that comes out about that period that does very well. But as a genre, it was huge in the 40s, 50s, 60s, probably into the 70s. I think it started waning after the 70s. It's popular as in film and in books. So it's one of those things that whenever I bring it up, agents and publishers sort of go, not so sure. But maybe. And it feels a bit weird as well, because I haven't actually visited the west of America, so it feels like I'd be writing about something that, although I've read a lot about and watched lots of movies about, I'm not sure. Anyway, so that's a possible time frame, and I'm sort of thinking about the links between Britain and America at the time. Obviously, they're very strong links, and people traveling from one place to another. So I've sort of toying with the idea of having a British character traveling to America, and therefore, through the eyes of the protagonist, being able to explain why I don't know everything that's going on, or the reader needs things explaining, because the guy who arrives, is effectively is our way of looking into that world. So that's a sort of a thing that keeps on coming back to me, and maybe that will take fruition at some point. And every year, I've got a friend of mine, one of my best friends, gives me a Christmas present every year, and we exchange Christmas presents. And on Christmas Day, I open, and all invariably, it's another book about the Wild West, and history of the Wild West. So I said to him this year, I said, it looks like eventually I'm going to just have to write this book, because he reads all my books. He's one of my beta readers, and he really likes Westerns as well. And he's basically, I think he's just seeding, saying like, you've got to write this book.
Well, it's an excuse to go and visit America as well, isn't it? Have a bit of a holiday and travel around.
Exactly. Yeah, I keep telling the wife that we need to go onto one of these ranches, do like a ranch holiday, and she's not interested at all.
I can see you on a horse. So.
Well, I'd love it. I had a thought years ago with a friend of mine. We said we'd get horses and ride up the whole Gooding. I think it's the Goodnight Loving Trail, which is from Texas right the way up to Montana. Do that on horseback. I thought, come on, that would be amazing. 3,000 miles or something, but it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult to do nowadays, of course, because there's so many roads and different things. But there's a great film. I thought this was like a ridiculous thing that nobody would ever do in modern day. But of course, like everything, somebody has thought of it. And there's a great film on Netflix called Unbranded, and it's all about it's basically I saw it a few years ago, but it's basically some young guys out of university to raise awareness of the unbranded Mustangs that are running wild around through the States. And there's literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them. I can't remember the numbers, but there's tons of these horses that are not native to North America. So horses were brought over by the Europeans, but they've bred and they've become wild. And there's so many of them that they can't survive on the land because of the harsh climate changes in winter and the summer droughts and things. So lots of them die of starvation, and it's a terrible problem. And so to raise awareness of this whole issue, these guys actually get these unbranded Mustangs, break the horses, as the cowboys say, by get them to be rideable. So they train the horses to be rideable, and they ride them all the way up to Montana from Texas. They do the whole thing, and they film it all, and it's amazing. The photography is incredible, and the whole thing is beautiful, and it's really interesting.
You'd have to get yourself a cushion, I think.
Possibly, but I don't think it would hurt any more than running 4,000 miles.
I don't know. I think the horse would be doing the running for you, wouldn't it? Sure.
Yeah, I'd rather be sitting on a horse than do. But there's a bit in the film where they actually get to the Grand Canyon, and they cross the Grand Canyon, but they ride down this ridiculous path, like it's about a meter wide down the side of the Grand, like one of this massive canyon, and it's just ludicrous. I mean, you just watch these guys, and it just any stumble, the horse, anyway, terrible. And there's other moments when they fall off, they get thrown by the horses and stuff, and you think you've just been thrown off like the day before, whatever. Now you're riding down this thing with a drop of 200 meters or whatever. Wow. But anyway, incredible. The photography, the footage, and everything is just really interesting. Anybody who's interested in horses or the West of America, or just sort of general sort of travel stuff, is really interesting. And the plight of these poor wild horses that just get rounded up as well. And
all I can think of now is you in chaps. So I mean, I don't know about that book, but
that's part of the attraction, obviously.
Fine.
Of me riding the horses.
So I do have a question, and you might not want to answer it. And it's basically, do you have any regrets about any of the books you've written, or any of the content you've put in it, or any of the storylines?
Largely speaking, no. So I think generally I'm happy with all the books. I'm quite pleased that they're out there. I think looking back, it's interesting as you develop and as the world develops, and things change. And I look back at some of the earlier books, and I know my wife highlighted that I often have the women in the books in terrible jeopardy, and horrible things happen to lots of the female characters. And that's not to say that horrible things don't happen to the male characters. And I think it's a reality of a period of relative lawlessness and a warrior class where men were the guy, the people who called the shots. And I sort of look at sort of parts of the world nowadays where you have a very male oriented society, and women are oppressed and horrible things happen to women. So I don't think it's unrealistic, but I think that possibly I could handle some of those things slightly differently, or not rely so much maybe on what they call, I think the term is, I read a review actually of I think of the Serpent Sword, when they said that they thought that one of the female characters was fridged. And that's a term that comes from a comic series. I think it's Green Lantern, but I'm not 100% sure, and I could be wrong about that. So somebody could tell me if they're wrong in the comments. But it's in a comic setting where the main character comes back and finds his girlfriend murdered and in his fridge, and that sets off the chain of events of the book, where he then goes in the comic, where he goes off then for revenge or whatever. And this term of fridging is where a female character suffers terrible, things, horrible things happen to her, which then send the male protagonist on a journey to right the wrongs or to seek revenge. And I think it's a very obvious trope that happens a lot in fiction, not just in my books, but it definitely has happened in my books. And I think as I've learned more about writing, more about the genre, and more about what are kind of cliches, I guess, or tropes, you're trying to constantly look for different ways of doing things. And obviously the whole, the world has changed, significantly in the last sort of decade, and the way we think about things, and the way we think about women and men and how they interact. And so I stand by all the books. I think everything that happens in them is believable and probably quite accurate to warriors and the horrible things that can happen to women. But the more the more I progressed, I've tried to make the female characters stronger and have more agency, and tell the story from their perspective to some extent as well. So I think in the early stage it was very much Bearbrand's perspective, and now in some of the later books I have female characters' point of views as well. I think I did actually even in the very first one. Actually, I remember now Sunniva, Bearbrand's love interest, in that she does have some chapters which are from her perspective. So even then, I was trying to be balanced by it. But yeah, I think that's a long answer to. I think that's probably the only sort of, and it's almost like a tonal thing, I think, or maybe where I feel like it's a shortcut to the inciting incident for the male protagonist is to have something bad happen to a female character. And I think that's something I kind of think could have been handled differently. And when we talked, interestingly enough, so we talked to a screenwriter, Greg Stewart, who's done the adaptation of The Serpent Sword for screen. So we're hoping to get it made into a TV series. And when we talked a lot about that whole situation in the book and how we'd handle it in a TV series, and he had lots of very interesting ideas. I don't want to go into all the details to give away stuff, but it was interesting how you can handle it differently and not have to be quite as explicit, or have those specific events happen to still come to the same conclusion that Bear Brand needs to go on his quest for revenge.
I mean, if you've only got one regret through an entire, well, 2 series, then it's not bad, really, is it?
No, well, that's it. I mean, I think really, I mean, I don't really regret anything about the books, because I think they stand as they are, and I think I don't really like the idea of this revisiting things and going back, and you get lots of you get the director's cut of movies and people going back. You even get it in books. People go back and they edit and say, "Oh, I'm a better writer now, so I'm going to change what I wrote 20 years ago." Yeah. I don't really see that. I just think you just need to move on, and the book was the best I could do at the time. I mean, that would be the only regret really I could have, is that I wish I could have done things better. I suppose at some points maybe I could go back and think, well, I could have done a bit better there, but I think everything stands up still.
Well, it does. I could do. And I think when I first got in contact with you, your books got me through the first proper lockdown, and I pretty much was reading them quite quickly, and then ordering on Amazon again, and then ordering on Amazon again. But in that period where people had nothing to do but like stay at home and read, or spend time with the kids, perhaps they'd rather read. Probably. No, but I discovered those books just by chance, and I'm obviously glad that I did, because they're amazing, and they got me through definitely that first lockdown, and obviously now I still read. So yeah, and that kind of leads on to the next question that I've got about fan interactions, because I'm sure as a famous writer, you interact with fans all the time, and you've always been quite gracious and kind with me. You even sent my dad a book at Christmas time, I seem to remember, which was quite nice. I
forgot about that.
Yes, well, I didn't. It's in my heart forever. I was just wondering if you've ever had any weird fan interactions. I mean, apart from me, obviously, being a mini stalker, whether you've had any just weird things that you think, that was a bit odd. I can't think of anything too weird, really. I think there's been some really interesting things that come out of fan interaction. So, if you consider yourself a fan, this is an interesting interaction, right? So you approached me as a fan of the books, and this is the second time we've talked and spent some time together looking around historical sites and discussing, books and archaeology and the world in general. So that, these kind of interactions are amazing. I think for me, it's wonderful to be able to, via the internet, really, the fact that the world is so much smaller now, that we can reach out via Zoom and obviously on a day-to-day basis via Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, reach out to people, and people can reach out to me as well. I mean, sometimes just get random questions that people say, and I don't know if it's like an automated response on sort of Messenger on Facebook, but sometimes I get messages on Facebook just says, "Please, can you tell me more about yourself?" And I've had a couple with exactly the same wording from different people, and they're people that have interacted with me already more normally. So I wonder if it's like an automatic, you get these things like predictive kind of prompts to how to respond. I wonder if they see these things and they just click the button and it sort of sends, but that's a bit random, suddenly just getting a message saying, "Please, can you tell me more about yourself?" And that feels a bit like, why would you press the button though? If it was somebody,
I don't know. Yeah,
strange.
I don't know, but in both times that it's happened recently, it's been people that have interacted with me, like asking about the books and stuff, and then I suddenly just get this, "Tell me more about yourself." It just feels a bit strange.
Indeed.
So no, I just ignore those messages. There's just some weird messages, so it's just like you just think, well, that's strange. Okay, another fan interaction. I'm just thinking, not weird, also positive fan interaction. A few months ago, a guy contacted me from Australia and said that he liked the books a lot, and him and his father-in-law, either his father or his father-in-law, and wanted to commission a set of miniatures, like 25mm figures, to be hand painted like the characters from the book, and then sent to me, which they did. So that was very nice. I've got them over on the shelf. I don't know if you can see, actually. They're very small, but over there. I'll go and grab one. I'll show you now. I've mentioned it. I should show you.
You'll have to now, and you can show your T-shirt off as well.
So look, I'll show you. So I don't know if you'll be able to. I don't know if it's going to focus. You see that?
Yeah, there's so much detail in such a small thing, isn't there?
It's incredible. So this is like the Sutton Hoo gear.
Yeah.
Sort of Radweld, maybe King Radweld. But I mean, it's incredible. You know, so there's a whole set of them, and all the others have got black shields because of Bearbrand and his black shields. So all the others have got plain black shields, and he included that one with sort of the King Radweld as well. So that was a great thing. I mean, even the TV, the possibility of a TV series that came about through fan interaction as well. So guy contacted me, James Faulkner contacted me, and he was a fan of the books and says, I'm a keen sort of amateur historian and reenactor and love the books and stuff, and have you got the rights to do a TV series or a film, and he would love to do something realistic, historically accurate, rather than sort of the more typical Hollywood version of sort of TV adaptations or film adaptations. And I replied and said, yeah, I've got the rights, you know, I haven't sold the rights to anybody. And he sort of went away, and I just thought that was it, you know, and then a couple of months later he came back and said that his brother-in-law, Jordan Woodley, was an actor and producer and worked in TV, and they wanted to get together with another. Would I be interested in meeting up? And so, you know, one thing led to another, and in the end we produced with a small production company in South Wales called Cinemas, and I mentioned Greg Stewart, the scriptwriter, before. They came on board as well, and together we and through kind donations, actually, one very generous donation from a reader, another fan who heard about the project and contacted us and gave us some money towards doing it. We produced a proof of concept trailer, which we're then using with the script that we've written and other stuff. We're using, trying to secure a proper production deal, and we've talked to different actors and different production companies and different people, and it's, you know, it's moving forward, but it's incredibly slow and difficult. But I'm really pleased with what we've done so far, you know. But all that came from a fan contacting me and just asking a question.
Well, do you think the Last Kingdom series, which is finishing, it's due out now, I think, isn't it? Anytime now.
Yeah.
Do you think that's eased the way, perhaps, for the genre and your series perhaps to be picked up?
Well, I mean, we actually chatted to Carnival Films. I actually had a Zoom call with them last year, who are the guys who make The Last Kingdom, but ultimately it was too similar to what they're doing, you know, so there was too many overlaps, and I think it's just, but I mean, ultimately the proposition was interesting enough that they had a call with us and chatted to us. So I think there's definitely an appetite there. There's Vikings, and there's now Vikings Valhalla is coming out on Netflix, which is like the sequel to Vikings series, and of course you mentioned Last Kingdom, and there's other things as well, but those are the big ones of the sort of the early medieval period. But there's definitely, I think it's a no-brainer. There's definitely an appetite for people. Definitely want to watch this stuff. Those shows have been successful enough to have sequel after sequel, you know, keep coming out. So there's definitely people want to watch them. We would love to make them more historically accurate than those series. So have, you know, costumes to be more historically true to the time. Have, you know, just why do they need to be like fantasy? Why can't they be historically accurate and still tell the same gripping story, which is what I try to do in the books? And I don't understand. And I kind of know why Hollywood does it. They do all these things. They have all these ideas where, oh, we can't have people wearing helmets in battle because then the audience are so stupid they won't know who's who. You know, we have to make it clear who the enemy are. So they have to all wear the same color tunics or cloaks or something, or have the same thing blazoned on their shield, or I don't know. They have all these different things, and it's all weird that everyone has to wear biker gear, leather and studs and chains or something. I don't know why that is. I mean, but that's just become the generic look of early medieval period stuff. Why can't they wear, you know, the amazing gear that they actually wore? Why can't you? And it's not going to cost anymore. I don't believe it's going to cost anymore to produce. But I think however you produce one of those shows, even if you go for the generic look and feel of the shows that we've mentioned, or try to go more historically accurate, I think they're going to be inevitably expensive. I mean, it's very expensive to produce. And I think the reason that these series probably struggle to get off the ground is because when a company like Netflix is approached and says, you know, we've got two series, we've got this series that's set in modern day, or we've got this series that's set in the 7th century, the modern day one is going to be cheaper to produce, unless it has like massive grand scale action with like tanks and planes and stuff. But if it's just people, and you've got people in locations that exist, and we can film, we can recreate things in the studio very easily, or we've got people and locations and costumes that don't exist, we're going to have to build and we have to find locations for. It just inevitably becomes more expensive. So I think that's the major stumbling block, really, is just the expense. But the stories are, I think, good enough, and people definitely would watch it. I think if we manage to get it produced, I'm convinced that they'll be successful, because people love to binge watch that kind of thing.
They do. And I mean, you mentioned how it's cheaper to produce something in the modern day, but then there's loads of series come out all the time, but then people watch it once and then never even think about it again. But things like, I've used it as an example just before, but The Last Kingdom, I've maybe watched that 3 or 4 times already. So it creates like a bit of a legacy thing, that if you were Netflix and if you're listening or watching, then it's the kind of thing you should pick up, because people do go back to it and it keeps viewers. Yes, it's more expensive, but ultimately it must pay back. It must do over time. But,
well, you'd hope so. Yeah. So we'll see. I mean, at the day, my wife keeps reminding me, that as we get on another call with an agent or a production company in the States or something, she says, remember your day job is the writing. That's what's paying the bills. So focus on the writing. And so I think at the moment that's true. I'm a writer. I'm just doing the writing. I'm involved with the team as a producer, trying to get this project off the ground. But we'll see.
Well, fingers crossed for it, because I'd love to say it. I might be an old man by that point, but
yeah, we can have you. You can run across the fells in the background, still running,
crawling across the fells in the background, perhaps.
Yeah.
And I mean, a bit of a slight segue from weird fan interactions is to a question that I'm always curious about, and it's, who is your hero? And I know for many people, a hero can mean many different things. So my heroes are my parents, simply because it's not an obvious choice, and people pick footballers or celebrities, but it's my parents who sacrificed quite a lot to give me and my sister the upbringing we had, and we're able to have the futures that we have now. And that's the kind of ethos I've tried to keep with my kids. So who is yours?
So now you made it difficult for me. Now I have to say my parents, don't I? Because
that's exactly why I said it. That's why I said
they watch this. I know my parents end up watching this, and they'll be like, "He didn't save us." So first, of course, I have to say my parents are my heroes. But it's actually true that when we had our first child, when my wife got pregnant with our first child, and I remember getting quite down or worried or upset or whatever, and thinking about, not because she was going to have a child, but just saying. And I remember talking to a friend of mine. He said, "Well, what's the problem? It's great. You can have a baby. It's all going to be good." And I said, "Yeah, I'm worried that I'm not going to be as good a parent as my parents. I'm not going to be as good as my dad at doing at being a dad. Because you've got no experience about it. And you sort of look at someone that you look up to and has done I think has done a good job, and so it's true, that I do definitely admire, what they've done, but and the choices they made and what they did to bring me and my sister up. But if I looked at other parts of the world and other things, and like in the celebrities and stuff, I think so writing heroes, I'd say probably David Gemmell, who mainly wrote fantasy, but wrote some historical fiction / fantasy stuff as well. He wrote a Troy series, was the last series he was writing when he died. But yeah, his first book was a book called Legend, and it's absolutely fantastic. And anybody who's into sort of heroic fantasy should read it. And if you're into my kind of books, which have a lot of action and sort of hero type characters, definitely worth a read. In fact, any of his books are, but Legend for me is fantastic. And Wolf of Wessex, my book I mentioned before about the old guy with an axe walking around with his dog. I mean, the main character in Legend is an old warrior with an axe called Druss or Druss, depending on how you pronounce it. And my character's called Dunstan, and he's got a big axe, and he's like an old warrior. And he's really my nod to David Gemmell. Also, of course, Bernard Cornwell. I'd have to say I can't not mention Bernard Cornwell. We mentioned The Last Kingdom, and his Arthurian books as well were probably one of the inspirations for me starting to write in the first place. His 3 books about Arthur, and of course the Sharp series as well. So he's incredibly prolific and successful and fantastic, and seems like an incredibly nice guy as well. I've not met him, but everything I've seen of him anywhere, his interactions with everybody seems to be great. So he's a hero. I know I'm giving you loads of heroes here. Musically, I have to say, I used to sing in a band, hence the cool microphone. I've sang in many bands, and I was really into music a lot. And my musical hero would be Freddie Mercury. So before it was popular to think Freddie Mercury was cool, I thought Freddie Mercury was cool. Long before everybody else thought that he was amazing. There were lots of Queen fans that thought he was amazing, and I was one of the absolute diehard Queen fans back in the 80s. And I had posters on my wall of Freddie Mercury, to the point that my mum, I remember when I was about 15 or 16, so said, it's okay if you don't like girls. And like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you got all these posters of Freddie Mercury on your walls. It's like, what? I didn't none of it registered to me. I was like, what do you mean? He's fantastic. Why wouldn't I have posters of Freddie Mercury
Exactly
on my walls?
Exactly.
Like, what? So that's all I had on my walls, was just posters of Freddie Mercury. I was a little bit obsessed by Freddie Mercury. So yeah. And then my final historical hero is Sir Richard Francis Burton, the explorer and writer and general amazing person. Apparently spoke 29 languages fluently. First white non-Muslim man to go to Mecca disguised as an Afghani, I think, where he could have been killed if he was found. That was like in the mid 19th century, early 19th century. Discovered Lake Tanganyika, tried to discover the source of the Nile. Wrote the first manual on the use of the bayonet and the saber or something for the British Army. I mean, he was a pretty impressive guy. And translated the Perfumed Garden and things like the Kama Sutra and stuff. And he was very interesting character. So and born on the same day as me, not on the same year, but
I hope not.
No.
But now you've listed all these amazing heroes, and I've just said my parents. If you're watching,
maybe they're as amazing.
I mean, if they're watching, and they probably won't be, but I'm going to have to change it. You're not my heroes anymore. I need a new hero. No, I regret saying that. They'll actually get me. Even though my parents are in the 60s, some way into their 60s, which they won't thank me for saying. My mother still scares the absolute crap out of me when she gets going. I think that's something that never leaves. When you hear,
I don't think it does.
When you hear your name said in a certain tone, oh no, what have I done? Now it's just by text, and I can tell not quite the hatred, but the vitriol that's coming from a text from my mother. I just know when I'm in trouble still. Whereas my dad just looks disappointed. That's which might be even worse. The most gentle man you're ever going to meet, but that look of disappointment, it never leaves. I should have chosen Freddie Mercury as well, shouldn't I? What is the weirdest or the most untrue thing you've ever read about yourself?
Ooh, that's a difficult one. I don't know. I suppose the most untrue thing that seems to have sort of propagated from the mini bio in the books is that I grew up. It sort of implies that I grew up all the time, all of my childhood in Northumberland. I'm trying to find if it's in here. It's not in the paperbacks, but there's sort of a line that sort of says, Matthew grew up in Northumberland. And it's true that I grew up for a few years in Northumberland, but it was only a few years of my childhood. It wasn't my whole childhood. So that's the thing that there's been a few times that I've had an interview or been asked questions, and it starts like an event or something. People say, well, we know that you lived, you were born in Northumberland, and you say, no. So I have to sort of set the record straight. So you can tell from my accent that I'm almost certainly not from Northumberland. So I'm actually from Sussex, West Sussex, on the coast, near a town called Littlehampton. So and now I live in Wiltshire. So, but yeah, I lived for a few years as a child in Northumberland. So that's probably the thing that gets repeated most. That is true, but not 100% true. I wasn't born in Northumberland.
Nothing controversial at all. Nothing.
I can't think of anything really controversial. No, not enough has been written about me. I think that's the problem.
I'm going to have to write something, aren't I? I'm going to have to put something out there.
Yeah, I think it's the fact that probably there's not that much been written about me. So
I've got a violin somewhere.
Yeah, so I'm sure there'll be something controversial after this. People will be writing all sorts of things. Yeah.
I can't believe you said that. So just to start those rumours off, what's the most useless talent you've got?
Oh gosh, most useless talent. I don't really have any useless talents because no talent is useless. So I do have a talent that this is probably verging on useless, but I'm going to upset my dog who's asleep down here, but I can whistle without looking like I'm whistling. So I can sort of like just smile and look like, and sort of whistle actually a tune without pursing my lips in a whistly fashion. So that's kind of useless.
That is a useless talent, but also useful, I think, if you try to throw your voice.
Yeah. But I mean, what I didn't say is I can't actually whistle properly. So that's the only way I can whistle.
How have you managed to develop that, but not being able to whistle?
Well, I think it's because when I was trying to learn to whistle, I discovered I had this strange talent that I could go and whistle like that. And then why learn the normal way?
Well, there is that. I was just trying to think there, if I've got any useless talents. I'm struggling to think if I've got any talents, full stop. I don't know. I'm rubbish at football, but that's just me being useless rather than a useless talent.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think I've got any either. I can whistle.
You have to ask your partner.
You what, sorry? You
have to ask your partner.
Oh, please don't. She'll have this list. Just don't. So what 3 words describe you best?
What, according to me or according to other people?
And you can't include whistler in those 3 words.
Oh, I don't know. Gosh, that's really difficult. I don't know. I mean, how can I describe myself? It's like, in 3 words.
In 3 words. Yeah. Matthew.
Yeah. I think if you actually meet me in person, the 3 words are maybe different than people would think they might be. But I'd say probably extrovert, loud, annoying.
because I have met you in person, I kept quiet there. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah. I know. Anyway, so I'm adding the annoying because I think sometimes my sense of humor in person can annoy people.
I don't think it does. I think we got on all right. I think our sense of humor may have merged at some point. And what is your biggest fear in life?
My biggest fear in life is dying.
That's quite a good one. I mean,
that's the truth. I've always been scared of death ever since my granddad died very suddenly when I was, I think, 5 or 6, and sort of something going to get serious here. But no, and it just it terrified me. I think it happened just at that age when you're kind of forming your idea of what life and death is all about, and I was very close to him, and he lived nearby and saw him regularly, and he literally just dropped dead. Had a heart attack and just dropped dead one day. So I came home from school and just got told, your granddad died, and he was only early 60s, so he was fit and healthy. It seemed, everything was fine. He just had a terrible heart attack, and ever since then, really, I think, there were years when I was a child, I was absolutely terrified. I would do things like, after that, I was terrified my parents were going to die, during the day suddenly. So one time I escaped from primary school and ran all the way home, crossing main roads and stuff during the day to get home to check that my mum was still alive, or because I was so terrified that she'd have died during the day. And when I got home, she was out shopping, and so there was nobody home. So I was convinced then that she died, and I was like in a total state, found by the neighbors or something, I think.
Wow.
So that's probably stuck with me. So the fear of death. This is probably why so many people die in my books, because the death is sort of the final fear. But I'm not really scared of anything else. I suppose scared of failure in general. I mean, everyone's scared of failure, right? And sort of doing something. I suppose every time a new book comes out, I'm scared of the first reviews. I'm scared of reading that this is the one that everybody hates, because I'm now writing the 9th book in one series. I think it's my 12th novel that I'm writing now. And you sort of think, well, by that point, you think I must know how to write a book, but every book is more difficult than the one before to write. And it's more difficult in terms of, I think it's because you know what you're doing more. So it's more of a struggle to make it better or good, or as good as I hope, I know it can be, or it should be. And I guess you've got more and more people reading them as well. So I'm more aware of the fact that I know there's people actually going to read these books. And so, each book that comes out, I am scared for those first few days. And I remember the last one, I think The Time for Swords, when it came out, which is now actually the first book of mine to have over 2,000 ratings on Amazon. So it's obviously doing very well, and its average is like 4.5 or something. So it's doing really well. But the very first review that came out on Goodreads, like the day before it was published or something, was a 2-star review and said, this is terrible. I couldn't get into it and hated it or something. And it really knocks you. You think, oh my God, that's the first review from some sort of a blogger or someone who reviews, and they had lots of followers and stuff. So there was, 50 people had commented and liked the post, and you think, oh no, it's going to be awful. Everyone's going to hate this book. And then of course the next reviews come out and they're positive. But the initial negative review, the terrible fear, of course, is that you'll get to 20 reviews and all of them will be bad. And then you think, oh my God, this book is awful.
Well, I guess for someone like you whose work is in the public domain, you put yourself almost there to either be knocked or praised. And that must be that must play games, because if it was me, I'd just be in a corner crying for most of the time.
Absolutely. And I think, as I said, I used to sing in a band before. I studied theatre studies at A level, and I wanted to be an actor for a time. So I was really into it. So all those things, singing in public and performing in public, it's very much about getting sort of instant reaction and praise. And I think that's probably part of my psyche. So writing is probably the same sort of thing. It's still being creative and putting something out there. And as you say, opening myself up for ridicule or insult or hopefully praise. But I think I'm probably doing it partly for the adulation, if you sort of psychoanalyzed it, because I've all these other things that I'm interested in. I don't know. My wife's convinced that I do everything for the praise. But by doing that, it's you've got to have the flip side of you've got to put yourself out there. And with books, it's weird because you spend a year working on them. So it's a very delayed reaction. So you have the whole time. And by the time you actually put it out there and it goes out to the world, you've moved on to the next book. So A Night of Flames is coming out in March, and I'm now 100,000 words into the sequel for Lord and Land. So you're so far, you're detached from it. And then it comes out to the world, and you're kind of then thinking, oh, right, so this is when I get the praise. This is when I get the moment of sort of approbation and validation that I've done something good, but you've kind of forgotten what you did by that point. It's a really weird thing.
And is that how you are going to continue in the future? Not with desperate for praise, but with
probably. That's probably. I don't think I could change that now.
With kind of 2 books a year coming out, is that the kind of?
Yeah, kind of. It looks about. I think at the moment it looks like it's going to be maybe 2 books a year or 3 every 2 years, something like that. So it's becoming a bit difficult to keep the 2 books a year timing going, because it's just difficult with doing it as a full-time job. You think, oh, I've got so much more time, and you have, but you've also got to do everything else in life. And I think there's only so much time that your brain can focus on writing. So I found that although I had more time, I can't double the speed of writing doesn't increase at the same speed as the amount of time that you've got available. So I've had to sort of say, actually, rather than 6 months for a book, maybe I need 8 months, give myself a couple of extra months. So 3 books every 2 years seems just about doable. We'll see. I know lots of writers end up writing like 1 book a year, and I think that's probably where it could end up. We'll see. But at the moment, 2 books every 16 months or whatever.
Do you worry that by doing it that way, that you probably do it yourself? You read a book and you've read it and it's done, and you move on to the next book to read. Do you ever worry that people will do that with your books if there's too much of a gap between books?
Well, there's not much I can do about it. I can't write any faster. It's not like I've got 20 books. It's not like I've got 20 books piled up that I'm like, I'll just I'll put these, I'll sit on them and not put them out. If I had 20 books ready to be published, I'd publish, one every 3 months or something over the next, X number of months. But that's not the case. So I can't really do it any faster and do it to the quality that I would need them to be. So
yeah. I think that's the main thing, isn't it? Because if you were just churning out crap, people would switch off anyway, wouldn't they?
Well, that's it. I think and especially with the longer series, I think there's definitely a tendency that can happen, and I'm aware of that. And so I think I'm second guessing a lot now by this stage in the series as I'm writing. I'm thinking, is this up to scratch? Is this up to par? Is it giving something new, something a bit different? I mentioned they've gone to France. So I'm trying to, all the time revitalize the series. So they're in a different location, there's different characters, there's different storylines, different things are happening. But there's only so many, you want to still keep it true to the main character. And I think that takes time as well. That takes a bit longer each time to try to make sure that it's living up to the rest of the series. And you don't want to get to the point that it's just churning out the same old story. I think some people would be happy with that. Yeah. Just a very similar sort of thing, but I wouldn't be.
I think as a reader, I always make the mistake, whether it's yourself or another author, if I find a book that I like or a series that I like, I'll read it, be addicted to it and read it in a few days, and then order the next one and keep going. Mm-hmm. And then before I know it, I've read them all and I'm kind of waiting for the next one to come out.
Yeah. But that's exactly what you should do. I think that's exactly what a reader should do. And that's fantastic from a writer's perspective. That's fantastic, right? Because you doing that, you're supplementing my income by, buying all of those books, and you're showing the publisher that there's the interest and everything. So that's great. And then I don't know, but I imagine most people, if they've read 8 books or 7 books in a series, they're not going to then decide not to bother reading the next one. They just think, they'll see it pop up on their timeline somewhere and say, oh, Matthew Harffy's got a new book out, or Bernard Cornwell's got a new, Bernard Cornwell released a new Sharp novel last year, and it's the first one he's written in, I don't know, like a decade or more. It's still sold. People didn't go, I'm not going to read another Sharp book because, that's not been written for a while. They just go, oh, Bernard Cornwell's got a new Sharp book. So
Exactly. And, I was reading a book recently by an author I won't name, and I've read his entire series, and I think we might have discussed it previously. I think you said he wasn't a very nice man. I'm only joking.
Oh, don't tell me that. What did I say?
I'm not going to name him.
To tell me off camera. To tell me later. I need to know.
I will. And I got to his last book and I read it, and I was waiting for it to come out. And it was so formulaic. It's got to the stage, you were talking about churning books out, it's got to the stage now where in the prologue, I knew by the end of the prologue who was going to die, what was going to happen, blah, blah, blah. There was going to be the main character, he was going to win the day, and then the person who was just being introduced was quite obviously going to die. It was like the red shirts in Star Trek in the 1960s. You knew for a fact as soon as someone who wasn't named but was on screen in a red shirt turned up, they were dead by the episode end. And it just felt a bit like that. So I imagine he's quite a famous author as well, but I think he's got himself into that position where he's just this character. He probably wishes it was over, but it's obviously providing an income.
Well, that's it. And so there is obviously that. I imagine, I know that going back to Bernard Cornwell and Sharp, and I think he'd written 10 books, or I'm not sure if he finished all of the 10, but he had a plan for 10 novels when the Sharp TV series got commissioned and was very successful. And from the back of that, he wrote another 10 novels, which he then interspersed in the timeline. So he had a timeline of the whole of Sharp's life, I think, or the bit that he wanted to cover. And I think he interspersed these novels in between, which is why if you go through, Sharp never has a love interest that survives, because the next book he can't have, because he'd already written the following book that some other love interest came in. So every book a love interest is introduced, then disappears. And so he had this timeline that he couldn't break, but he had to write more books because they were very successful. I'm sure he doesn't regret that, but it must have been difficult to write 20 books in a series when you'd only really thought about 10.
Yeah, I'd love to think that I could be a writer, because I do, as part of my job, write for a living, just in a very different way. I write very technical stuff, but I get paid to do that. I don't think I'd have the dedication and time to sit in my own free time, because I know that's how you started.
Well, yeah, I think that's the idea. You have to start that way, really. I think. I mean, there's no one's going to pay you to write a novel unless you're famous. Nobody's going to pay you to write, until you've written.
And I just don't. I don't think. I just haven't got the patience. Which is, I've got the patience to sit and read them, but not to sit and write them. No. So I'm quite envious that your mind can do that. Because there's loads of stories in my head that I'd love to tell that I probably couldn't tell, but they should probably never see the light.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because lots of people say to me, "Oh, I want to write a book, or I've got an idea, or I'm writing a book, or I'm going to write a book," and not every single one of them, but often they don't do what they said they're going to do. They say they're going to write a book, or they start but they don't finish, because it is a difficult discipline. There's more to writing, I think, is discipline and consistency, and just sitting down. And you were mentioning before that whoever this writer is that's formulaic, that's churning out these books. I mean, the reason that whoever they are is successful and they've still got books coming out is because they sit down and write. And at the end of the day, that in itself is a huge part of being successful, is just actually writing and consistently bringing out books. So
I mean, my daughter, she's 14 in April, and she wants to become a writer. And ever since, I think she was 7, she just said, "I want to be a writer. I want to be a writer. I want to be a writer." And I say, "Well, what about going to university? What about this? What about that?" And she'll say, "No, my plan is just to be a writer." And it's like, "Well, that's great, but you have to start writing. You have to start putting pen to paper or typing or whatever, because that can't be your plan when you get to 18 and go, oh, what now?"
The thing is, it's weird, because I mean, some young people, like 18, 19, 20, whatever, do become successful writers, but it's very rare, and normally it's because you don't have the life experience, really. Mm-hmm. And so I mean, I didn't really start working seriously on I started working on the Bear Brown books when I was in my 30s. I didn't really seriously publish and get really into writing until I was in my 40s. And I think it's when it's then when you've kind of got enough experience to look back on, and it's difficult. 18, what do you know at 18? I mean, you could write. I mean, it's not much. So going to university is a way of getting more experience and knowledge and learning about interactions and things.
I mean, I look back at myself at the age of 18, and I just think, what an absolute idiot. Yeah. Try not to swear. Yeah. What an absolute turnip. Because if I knew then what I know now, I would have done things differently, but then I wouldn't be the person I am. So it's this big circle. But yeah, being 18 it's an awkward stage, because you're treated as an adult in society, but you're not actually an adult yet. You're still developing as a person, aren't you? So it's a difficult age. Sorry, I went off on a bit of a sad tangent there. I didn't mean to.
That's all right.
I've got one last question, and then
I'll
stop taking up your valuable time, because I realised I've taken up a lot of your time. It's quite a quick one, and it's if you could travel anywhere, anytime in a time machine, where would you go and when would it be?
Ooh. Well, there's lots of obvious answers around seeing things in my books, and things like that. But I mean, that would be interesting, because lots of the stuff in my books is pretty much conjecture, as to what actually happened in certain places. So that would be quite interesting to go and see battles that take place in the books, or see what Bamborough Castle really looked like, before it was a stone castle, things like that. But monumental moments in history, I think if I could choose, it's going to sound, I don't know. Anyway, but probably the time of like Jesus Christ's crucifixion and resurrection, and see what really happened there. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure he was crucified, whoever he was, but I'm pretty sure he died. But how did the whole story around the resurrection, take place? And so actually being a fly on the wall to that moment, if it truly happened, and if it didn't happen, then seeing that and seeing what really happened, that would be interesting.
I mean, it would be interesting to find out when the exact date was, because I don't think anyone's actually sure anymore, are they? So.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that's it. So that'd be interesting. Yeah. So I'm not religious, but I've always been brought up in a religious family, and sort of, so that's an interesting thing, just the impact that this one man's life and death and resurrection, if you believe that, has had on the world for the last 2,000 years. And that would be interesting to see exactly what was really going on.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe some of the time of some of his miracles, all these miracles that documented, turning water to wine and stuff like that. So what it really happened, because I don't believe that there was water turned to wine, even if Jesus existed. So that would be interesting.
Yeah, that's quite a good one, actually. It's better than what I had, so that's all right. Mine was going to be finding out what happened in the Mary Celeste. So yours is a lot deeper.
But this is still interesting, right? So it's still going back to a moment of intrigue to know what it just is. I think in the case of Jesus, just the sheer impact of the stories that have obviously impacted billions of people's lives. So it'd be interesting to see. I don't know what I'd do with that information, because then I'd come back to the present day and go, it's not true, or it is true, or whatever. And everyone would go like, well, either the people that believed already would believe, the people that didn't probably say, you've seen it.
Exactly. What would happen is that you'd come back and people would be waiting for you for both sides, and they'd both take turns to make sure you couldn't speak again.
There's probably a novel there.
There is. I wonder what that could be. Yes. No, well, thank you very much for your time, and I've taken up quite a bit of it today, and
that's all right.
But you haven't shown your t-shirt off.
I haven't shown my t-shirt off. I will show it off now. So can you see that there?
There you go.
You see that?
Awesome.
Okay. Awesome dads. What do we do?
Exploring dungeons and slaying dragons.
There you go. That's what we do. So so for anybody who's not aware of what that dice is, the die, the 20-sided dice, I obviously play Dungeons and Dragons, and have done since I was a kid, and still do. So, and I think lots of historical and fantasy novelists nowadays of the same sort of genre, that ilk, grew up playing role-playing games like dice and tabletop role-playing games, which I think it did something to our imaginations and our brains, and we just want to carry on telling stories.
Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
And it's less painful than your running. So it brings us full circle.
It does.
To your runs. So best of luck with your runs and raising money and awareness for the charities, which are, and you can tell me again, the charities.
The Northeast Autism Society and the Alan Shearer Foundation. And best of luck with your new book that's coming out. It's March, is it?
It's March, yeah. That's the Night of Flames in March. And as I said before, for anybody who's got this far into the whatever this is, this video chat, we'll both put all the links to the Just Giving and Facebook pages and everything else in the descriptions of the video. And please donate if you are able to the great causes that Craig is running for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Right.